Hi, Stephen. Thanks very much for joining me again on another quick video to talk about all things security and indeed monitored security. I know there's something that really important that you want to share today, but before you get into that, would you mind giving us a quick introduction?
Hi there, Alex. Yes, certainly. My name's Stephen Lord. I'm the General Manager of Southern and Northern Monitoring Services. I've been in the industry for coming up to 9 years and in SMS for about 2.5.
Fantastic. So we're going to talk about CCTV today, which is obviously quite an integral part of most people's security setup, whether they're residential or business. I know when it comes to CCTV monitoring, though, there's a very important and more specific area you want to focus on today. What is that?
Yeah, let's talk about visual verification, because it's something that often gets confused with CCTV or lumped in together as if it's the same thing. And it's quite different in most setups. So I thought it'd be helpful to explain how that works, really.
Super. So in a sense of monitoring, what is visual verification?
So I think an easy way of looking at it is almost to say it's not camera activated, as traditional CCTV generally is, but it's activated by an intruder panel. And that's a fundamental difference to the way that it works. And that means that in certain sites, you are constantly being bombarded by movement. And CCTV activations are generally driven by some kind of movement. It might be there's tripwires or there's red walls or something like that on the site. But you find some sites which just aren't suitable for traditional CCTV monitoring unless you go down the route of putting things like ANPR cameras in for vehicle movements, that kind of thing. But visual verification is much more at the simple end of the spectrum. And that makes it a lot more cost effective because it's fundamentally doing a different thing. What is that different thing? That different thing is it does not go off and activate your transmission of images through to the monitoring center until there's an intruder alarm or a fire alarm, but mostly it's used in intruder circumstances. And that makes a big difference because when you're paying for a monitored system, you're really paying for two things. You're paying for the infrastructure and that 24/7, 365 availability that all ARCs commit to. And then you're paying for operator time as your variable cost. And the more your system is activating, the more the operators are looking at the images and are reacting to them and escalating and doing those things. And visual verification, because it's triggered by an intruder panel, much more cost effective for that reason.
That's really interesting. It's not actually activated by a CCTV system, which tricks the mind, because obviously you're thinking of visual verification. You'd need cameras to do that and CCTV. What does that actually look like in practice?
So in practice, what you would have is, if you imagine an intruder system triggered by sensors on the perimeter of a house or a small factory, for example, and you might have movement sensors inside the house. And all intruder systems, if you want a police response, you have to follow the confirmation rules. And that's also to stop false alarms. So if somebody walks through your front door while your system is armed, it might trigger one sensor, might trigger a sensor on the door. And that will trigger an unconfirmed alarm through to the monitoring center after an appropriate filtering time. But you can't confirm that on its own and get a police response because you need to have, it's called sequential confirmation because the sensors need to effectively see the intruder walking around the building and triggering more than one sensor. Then it becomes a confirmed alarm. But visual verification can be used as that confirmation. So when the unconfirmed is sent through to the ARC, the video images are also transmitted by the NVR at the same time, and the ARC can link them together. And as your alarm is going off, they can see what's happening on site. And that's a huge help if you are in a situation where something serious is happening, in that an accurate description can be given. It also means advice can be given to key holders if they're going to be attending site. You don't want your key holders going into a dangerous situation if there's an intruder on site, particularly if they're armed or something like that. So suddenly it takes your intruder from being sensors and noises to actually much more information around what's going on site.
So it just adds another level of protection, I suppose, to a traditional intruder alarm like we've been talking about on previous videos.
It does, and also it means that protection is available in pretty much all circumstances where an intruder alarm is doing most of the job. You know, on my own house, for example, I don't have CCTV monitoring because there's a path going, people are wandering past all day long. It would just be triggering left, right, and centre. It's no use. But with visual verification, I know that if somebody breaks in, the ARC can look at the cameras, see what's going on, and make an assessment. And that's what I think really valuable. plus that advantage of being cost effective. So it works much better in a residential situation, or maybe in an empty property where you don't want to see every single movement outside. You only really want to see if something's triggered.
It's interesting that you mentioned cost there, because obviously all security equipment and services, they're an investment in safety and protection, essentially. From a business perspective, have you encountered scenarios where businesses have potentially saved money or gained value in the long term by having these things armed?
Yes, we've got one example we set up relatively recently where they actually did a slight derivation of it and didn't have it just on an intruder system, but they also effectively drove a staff safety system from it. So if a button is pressed in store in this particular retailer, then the ARC dial into the cameras, broadcast a message, what's happening, is everybody okay, you're being watched, that kind of thing, and that drives a staff safety benefit. And everybody is very conscious of the fact that over time there's been a rise in violence against shop workers, NHS workers, all sorts of people who don't deserve that kind of treatment. And to get that external presence makes a big difference. So I've seen it operate in the safety environment, I've seen it operate in the intruder environment, and I've seen a few places where people have got cameras triggered by fire alarms, so that on a big site, for example, if sensor A goes off, and that's maybe a big distance from the next sensor or from the reception to the building, we can go and have a look and see, can we see any signs to confirm what's happening at that particular place.
Amazing. So what would your advice be to security installers and providers who may be talking to someone who's got an intruder alarm installed, but it's quite basic, doesn't matter whether they're residential or business? How would you recommend to them to introduce the concept of visual verification to them?
I think you described it very well as that extra dimension to an intruder system. And sometimes people think CCTV has to be massively expensive and has to be complex, but actually a small MVR with 2, 3, 4 cameras on it can be set up relatively quickly. And the link back to the intruder alarm can be done electronically at the ARC. So it doesn't need to be a massively complex exercise, but it gives people that next level of protection that they're maybe not getting from their intruder system today.
Super. Well, thank you very much, Stephen, for explaining visual verification today. And I look forward to catching up with you on the next video.
Thank you very much.